सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.
Vrnda Bhakti presents The Gift of Desperation, a Bhakti recovery podcast. This is a 12-step based Bhakti-oriented space. Here we share our experience, strength, and hope in the spirit of recovery from addictions and associated behaviors. Welcome.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, well, this is one of Vryn is one of my very favorite people on earth, Vrnda Lila.
Aw.
And she's one of the she's one of like the first devotees that I became friends with, actually. If not the only devotee No, I'm only kidding. I'm so kidding. I just had to get that in there. But no, really, she was really I think when Rin and I first met, at least from my side, I was like, okay, she's my friend forever, like soul sister.
That's exactly how I felt too. I still
Yeah.
remember, meeting you at the Bhakti Center, and it was like I don't know, you took my hands and you like looked into my eyes, and I was like, that's my girl,
Oh my God. Did I really take your hands and look into your
Straight
eyes?
up.
I love that.
Yeah, we were like on the street and we just
I
connected.
remember that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was pretty insane. That's a rarity.
I know.
So
It's
so so I have Bryn on the show because she is, for me, a beacon of hope. She's been through a whole bunch, and she just keeps like pushing on, and she's like one of these special people. So hello, Bryn.
Hello. That's so nice.
Well, it's true. So Bryn, you were born into the movement, no?
Yeah, I was. I was
So
indeed.
so so you here you're free to talk about how your experience was, and in life. This is what we do here. We talk about recovery from things that happen in life. We talk about recovery from all kinds of things. Um so where were you born?
Okay, I was born in Denver, Colorado in 1991. And my parents my parents worked in the Govinda's restaurant there in Denver, and I think my dad had a little like prasadam cart, and my mom cooked. Yeah, and we lived there for a year only. And then we moved to Gitanagri.
You were an
And
only
then
child?
no, I have an older sister.
Was she around at the time? You guys are like quite a difference in age, no?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. But she was around from the very beginning. She really loved me. And was like kind of like my fairy, not my fairy godmother, but she was definitely a magical older sister.
I love that.
Anyone that knows her, you know, and knows me at that time will remember she treated me like a little princess.
Mm, I love that. You deserve that anyway, so. so so and then you were raised in Gitanagri, or?
Yeah. So yeah, we lived now there's a new temple building, but we lived in a few different places on the farm. We lived in the women's ashram, which was in the old temple building upstairs. And then for a time, we also lived in these cabins on the farm, which were like pretty
Austere.
rustic, very, very austere. Yeah, very austere. And then I think at a certain point, yeah, when I was around 5 or 6, we moved off of the farm and got a little house, and my parents started working. And like before that, they were only working in the temple and
How
for
was
the
it
temple.
like? How was it at home? Do you remember? Do you have like fond memories as a child, or like with your family? Were they
Yeah,
loving? I mean,
yeah, I do. I mean, Kitanagri especially was really, really magical at the time. So it was, Bhakti Tirtha Swami's community. There was like a very small group of devotees there, and a very small group of kids, but everyone had kind of, lived through the 80s, lived through the 70s, and I think when I was growing up, at least in that particular place, there was a lot of protection and just like a really sweet community. So, yeah. And then, there's some like contrasts of, just normal things I think that you encounter in like temple life, which is like a lot of like mental health stuff. Like looking back, I think about like some of the, devotees that I was around and how, yeah, there was like a level of acceptance for people, and people and how they were and how they served and how they, perform their service. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it was interesting. I think ultimately, when I think about Gita Nagari, it was actually like such a magical time that I'm just now like diving back into, and I'm doing a lot of writing and art, kind of trying to recapture and like fully understand that experience.
wow.
But yeah, that was beautiful. And then my home life, was a mixture of like total like magic and imagination and like only existing in like Krishna land, which is, like that was the world that I was in. And then my dad was a pretty intense person, a very, very sweet devotee, and a really wonderful person, but he was pretty intense. And so, you know, and he was pretty abusive. So there was like a contrast between, you know, the beautiful, magical, kind of free and wild childhood, and then also like the contrast of dealing with that.
So was he abusive towards you guys or towards your mom or
Yeah,
just
he was when I was little, I think he was mainly abusive towards my mom. But he also like he didn't live with us that much when I was younger. So in the times that I was around him, it was always like very intense. But then when he was gone, I was basically raised by my mom and her friends, and then like the other families in the community. And they were all really wonderful. So I think that's probably why I am uh grounded now. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
so did you find it hard navigating when you got maybe older? So moving forward, you guys went to Alachua at some point, right?
Yeah, we went to Alachua in like 2001. So Gitanagri, and I'm sure, it's like that today, but it reached a point in the community where it was really hard to find work in the surrounding area, and socially there wasn't a lot going on for young people. So it was like there was a small group of devotee kids, and then, you know, there were I went to public school and I was able to make a lot of friends. So I had that world as well, but yeah, I really
You know
needed
why?
some.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no,
God, you really need
I really needed some like awesome social experiences. And so that's kind of what Alachua gave. It was like I mean, now it's a huge community, but when I moved there, it was like, you know, not as big, but there was a really solid group of girls my age. And there was the Alachua Learning Center, which was the charter school with the vegetarian lunch. And, back then, like being a vegetarian was pretty counterculture. So having a vegetarian cafeteria was awesome. And so that's one of the main reasons why we moved.
cool. That's so cool. So
Yeah.
what made your parents decide to send you to public school instead of to like Gurukul
Yeah. So
or home?
when I was growing up, the sleepaway Gurukuls were just in India. There were no more in Gitanagari. And the only kids in my community that went to the sleepaway schools in India were the boys. Um, but so on the farm there were day schools. So, different parents and adults in the community would take up the initiative to start these day schools. And they were good for a time, but whenever my mom felt that I wasn't like up to state standard in education, she would send me to the public school. So I
Wow,
would go back and forth.
that's pretty cool. I mean, your mom is kind of
Yeah.
forward thinking in that way, was she not? I mean, I know a lot of devotees that
Yeah. I mean,
have
she
gotten.
was. Yeah, she was. And my sister's 22 years older than me, and she's like the second oldest Gurukuli. So she went through, the whole sleepaway Gurukul system in America. And, my mom like wasn't a part of her life very much growing up. So I think by the time I came along, my mom was very clear about how she wanted me to be raised, with one foot in both worlds.
Mm,
And for me, that was really good and it totally worked. But I think a lot of kids that I grew up with really struggled with that transition, because
yeah.
and even then, like it's not like I went to public school and like wasn't like bullied, you know what I mean? It was like
You were one of the
I
cool kids.
yeah.
Of course, you were one of the cool
Definitely,
kids.
yeah.
By the way, Bryn is one of the most. She's got. I just love her artwork so much so that I've got two tattoos designed by her holiness.
Dude, I'm so honored. I think you're so
You
cool
should
for that.
you should just check that out. Vrnda Lila, right? Is that
Yeah,
your
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Vrnda Lila on Instagram.
Yeah, I started really drawing in Gitanagari because we would have, it was just me and my mom most of the time. So, a lot of like the younger ladies who would come stay with us. And so quite a few of them are artists. And I think like in my mind, that was the first time I really started, um, yeah, getting into art. And then when I lived in the Brooklyn Temple, I started drawing the deities, and that was how I would connect with them. And then after I left the temple, drawing pictures of Krishna were my way of, yeah, just connecting with his form that manifests on the page to me in
That's
whatever
nice.
mood,
Well, not the funny thing, but the most beautiful thing is I feel that when I see your stuff. It's not like, you're not like this technical drawer. You're
Mm-mm.
not a technical artist. There's just this mood that I completely connect with.
Ah,
So, yeah, that's like for me, that's what it gives. It gives like the same thing. I can look at it and I can feel your connection.
thank you. Yeah, it's the way that I feel about it is it's like my inner my inner Gita Nagari child, like coming out. Like my art is very much that expression. And it's not something I can like connect with too much in my day-to-day adult life, but somehow it just like comes out through my art.
That's beautiful that you have that. You know, you
Yeah.
have that like that solid, like really nice memories. When did it start to get for you? When did it start to get too dogmatic and like a bit like when did things start?
Yeah.
You know, when did your fantasy world start falling apart, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Oh my
I
God.
know that this happened for you
Yeah, it happened
and
a
I know
few
you're
different
working through
times.
that. Yeah, and I know
Yeah.
you're working through that. Hold on, I gotta get rid of this. You
Yeah,
know,
I
the
am.
pigeon. Go away, pigeon. Go.
That was so when I went to India, I was so shocked that there were pigeons there.
I know, and
I
I
was
just
like, you
hate the
gotta be
sound of a pigeon. I know I have to love all creatures, but the sound of
kidding.
pigeons really irk me. They're like, "Roo, roo." Sorry.
No. No, yeah, that's so
Indian pigeons. You think they're like they do the head
it'd be,
nod,
like,
like
beautiful.
"Bloop, bloop, 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 bloop."
They're just like New York pigeons.
Your pigeons are more like. "Rrr."
Yeah, New
Anyway,
York pigeons are fucked. Um, wait, what was your question?
okay. So when things start going south, to put
Oh
it
yeah, when
blunt
did
south, but you know, like when did
yeah,
it, you know, 'cause we all have a point in life where we just realize that things aren't just the way, like for me,
uh,
I didn't have like this magical childhood, but in a way I did. I had
yeah,
my own little magical world that I
yeah,
lived in.
yeah.
And I remember at around 11, I decided that the outside world was an enemy.
Mm,
And I decided
yeah,
that I was going to fight it with every fiber of my being.
wow.
And I remember that decision. So I don't know if you have like
Yeah, I
a
do.
moment.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I remember, I think the first moment of, because the way that I see it is like, so, the over culture that I was raised in was the Hare Krishna culture, was ISKCON culture. That was like the main culture in my life. And, American culture was that was like the outside world. Like that's what, was separate. Like even though I went to public school and even though, I had friends, like I always had this very like strong feeling of distinction between me and them. Between
Yes,
me and
you were in a
like
bubble. Like you got
yeah,
your
I was
bubble
in
when you were
bubble.
in that bubble.
And that's part of the culture. It's like we were
Right.
taught that, you know, we're devotees and anyone
Normies.
outside
They're
their karma.
carmies.
Yeah, their
Yeah.
karma. And, in a way that can be kind of awesome because it like gives you some separation, and it like forms your identity separate from, you know, whatever it is. And it can be a safe place, and I've experienced that in like different subcultures too, like that feeling of like protection and like separation. Um, but then I think I was about like 11 or 12, and I've always been, I've always been very, it's always been very important to me to be sincere in whatever it is that I'm doing and to approach things from from myself, like approach spirituality from a place of like understanding and relation as opposed to um
Education and conditioning.
education and conditioning, yeah, and just like cultural norms. So whatever that
Hmm.
is, like whatever the cultural norms, if it's in like mainstream society or it's in like the Hare Krishna community. Yeah, so I think I was pretty, I would have been considered like a very good girl in the Hare Krishna community. You know what I mean? I didn't talk to boys. I hung out with, my group of friends who everyone really loved. I was doing, all the things that were like culturally, encouraged. for young girls my age. And then I got
Mm.
to a certain point and I started to feel the dogma of, repetition of action, and I started to become aware that, you know, people kind of go through the motions without maybe necessarily having like, you know, a really sincere approach to each of the motions. And they're
Yeah.
just going through, you know, what's like socially accepted. I think like the
Mm.
social aspect had a lot to do with it. And when I was like 11 or 12, I started to get really turned off by that. And that's when I just started opening up my mind, and I stopped going to the Alachua temple. Um, and I
What is your,
started going to like the local preaching center.
how did that like resonate with your family?
It was rebellious. Like I think I got in trouble with my dad about it because he wanted me to
Mm.
just, go to the temple and do, um, yeah, just
Whatever
do
he does.
kind of the regular program. But my mom was really encouraging and supportive, and she was always, you know, yeah, just encouraging me to kind of discover my own path, which was cool. So
That's
therefore, like,
amazing. That's
yeah, it was
rare.
cool. It
That's
was cool.
so rare. I love
And rare.
that.
Yeah,
See, I'm learning stuff about you too that I didn't know. When we first
yeah,
met, you were just sort of approaching therapy and sort of
yeah,
like going through it, trying to like figure out what happened and kind of
yeah,
suss and navigate your way through that. And so now it's like, what, 4 years down the line.
yeah,
And
yeah. And then, yeah, so yeah, that was just, I think that was like the very beginning of, um, you know, the independence of my mind kind of, manifesting. Um, and then, yeah, I think throughout my teens, and then, I really just like explored my identity outside the Hare Krishna community. And I found, I discovered music that I was really interested in.
yeah,
And music,
by the way, Vryn is also a musician,
yeah,
and she
but
plays.
I
Are
don't
you
like
still
big
are you still in
band.
your band at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay,
We're on a slight hiatus, but we're still doing stuff.
great.
Um, yeah. So I got into music, and I, made other friends outside of the group of devotees, and my world just really started to open up. And then I moved into the Brooklyn Temple, which was kind of like a whole other experience. And
How
that,
old were you?
yeah, that was when I was 17, the same year
Oh
that my
wow.
dad died. Yeah.
Well, let's yeah, I wanted to ask you. So, what happened with your dad? So, was your dad living with you at the time? Had you
Yeah.
like so
Yeah.
so how did that pan out and how did you experience all of that? I'm gonna let you tell that story.
Yeah. Okay. So my dad suffered from a very abusive childhood. Um, and he was just kind of messed up from that. He had severe trauma. He definitely had PTSD. Um, so my whole life with him growing up, I think, you know, a lot of my experiences with him were colored and influenced by that. And he had gotten diagnosed with hepatitis C and was
He
taking,
was a drug user, wasn't he? Or
yeah, and like
former before he
before
entered.
before his devotee days. So in
Yeah.
the 70s, he was a wild man. He was a wild man. I think we would have been friends. But yeah, some of the stories I've heard from like Mother Padma, who was his like very old friend from New Orleans where he joined, has told me some, yeah, just really insane stories. But like one time, maybe I shouldn't be telling this on here, but one time I think he got into a fight with his Sankirtan um partner and tried to run him over with his car.
God. We should not be
Yeah,
laughing. That is not even
I
funny.
know. I know. So stuff like
But
that, you know? Um, but yeah, he was also like,
like
you know,
uncontrolled emotions, like
yeah.
that rage.
Oh my God,
This is,
totally.
so this is sort of the, if you're raised or if you have a parent that has rage issues, like I did, not my dad, but my
Yeah,
stepdad, rage issues, that is really, really damaging for kids.
it is.
Because I
Yeah.
don't know if your dad was like that, but my stepdad, he would just
Oh yeah.
explode, and
Yep.
everyone was quaking in their shoes in the corner because
Yep.
you didn't know what was going to happen next.
Yep.
And it was
Yeah.
very, very, very unsafe, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And that was, yeah, that was my experience. And I think it was even more extreme because, you know, the, and this isn't something that I realized until I was older, but, you know, the term toxic positivity.
Yeah,
Well, the
exactly.
Hare Krishna community is I didn't realize it until I actually started going to hardcore shows when I got a little bit older. But there is just like a complete denial and repression of any kind of negative emotion besides
Love of
like
Krishna.
happiness.
Yeah.
And I say happiness with a question mark because I'm not sure that it's really happiness. And I think it might be just like more so a denial and a disassociation of
Yeah, it's like a spiritual bypassing, is it not?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, in turn, there's a tremendous amount of passive violence within the community.
Oh, that's
And
really interesting. Very
yeah,
interesting that you picked that
yeah,
up. And that's so key. That's like why the Bhakti Recovery Group exists.
yeah, it is.
Like for that little
Seriously.
window, that
Yeah,
window.
yeah, yeah, seriously. So, yeah, so it was like, you know, I had these experiences with my dad, and then within the Hare Krishna community, there was just this total like disregard or like non-acknowledgement for any kind of anything remotely related to that,
Have
you
you
know?
have so that was your experience. So
Yeah,
had you had an other experience? Like were there others that felt the same as you, or did you feel quite alone in that opinion? Did you ever even like
totally alone. Yeah, I felt
um,
totally alone. I didn't have any friends. Well, actually, I mean, most of my friends, you know, their dads like weren't in the picture. Like a lot of my friends' moms were older, they were Prabhupada disciples or they're, you know, first generation and they had arranged marriages and it, you know, didn't work out or something. So, um, yeah, so I did feel, yeah, I felt really alone in that. Um,
you think now in hindsight that a lot of people felt the same way but just didn't want to say it? Think about that.
maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Because
Maybe.
it's like the no. We don't talk about the elephants in the
Yeah.
room.
Yeah. Like we don't talk about suicide in the Hare Krishna community, you know, but
No.
it happens. And like why do people like if you have I don't know, if you have a community and you have members of the community, it's like and if anyone dies, especially from suicide, I feel like the whole community needs a good looking at, you know? Um
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's not so different from American culture too, because, you know, suicide and you know, domestic abuse and mental health, like all these things are, you know, still stigmas in
You know,
like
that's
every
that's so
culture.
the weird thing, because it's like so you have like this the stigma of of these things. And
Yeah.
in within a Krishna conscious lens, these things are Maya, right? It's just all Maya.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all
And
Maya.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the thing is, there is
Totally
not really that.
dismissed.
Yeah, there's not. The thing is that, yeah, we can say and intelligent, like,
Hmm.
intellectually, we can separate that. However, we're still in the age of Kali. We're still in the age of Kali. We're still human and
Yeah.
fallen, all of us, in that
Hmm.
way, that we can't just, spiritually bypass that and say, okay, it's just Maya, so it's not a big deal. Like,
No, you
all I
can't.
got to do is pray to Krishna. It's like there
Yeah.
there are a lot of gray areas in between that. A
Oh,
lot.
absolutely. And then therefore, I mean, and
Complex.
you can see how that type of mentality, um, you know, I mean, if you look at, the Gurukulis and the abuse that Gurukulis have experienced for decades, and how the community responds and how the community has historically responded to those experiences. I mean, it's just like, yeah, there's no, like, it's very clear that the culture of spiritual bypassing is very
Alive
much
and well.
not working. And it is, yeah, the tower is going to crumble and fall at some point, probably sooner
Yeah, and
rather.
but let's hope that there's something in place, like, a
Yeah.
very firm, emotional and mental health,
Yeah, we can hope.
coalition to help
Yeah.
people.
I mean,
Like,
that would be
that's like
amazing.
that's like the only thing that I'm interested in,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
with my service. Of course, I
Yeah.
just mean right now, like, I'm not interested in it falling. I'm not interested in anyone getting punished. What I'm interested in is change. and
Yeah.
and I'm coming from the outside. I'm not a guru code, you
Mm.
know so I have actually an advantage there, but I don't have like this baggage where I have to work
Mhm.
through that.
Mhm.
I'm here on my own free will,
Yeah.
and try just found, like, basically a way of relating to God that makes sense to me. It's almost like a science, actually. And I would really like to have a healthy community. And so the only thing I
Yeah.
can do there is do my part, and that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah. And you're doing amazing. You're
But
doing
anyway,
amazing. Yeah.
but we're talking about you. So what about your dad? We didn't even get to that yet. So that's how we started this conversation.
Oh,
So
yeah. 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 So,
he had
um,
rage issues, and he
yeah,
would
he
almost
had,
run over this guy in a car.
yeah. Yeah, he had a lot of rage. And simultaneously, he was also one of the most generous and like giving and wonderful people. Like anyone who knew my dad knew that he was just like he would help anybody, doesn't matter who they are, what they needed help with, when they needed help. Like if a devotee needed to get picked up from the airport like 6 hours away, my dad would go at like, 2 a.m. and like pick them up. Like he was a really, really wonderful devotee. Um, but then yeah, he had this other side to him. And he was on an experimental medication for hepatitis C, and one of the side effects was
Experiment.
suicide. Yeah, and they didn't screen him for depression before he started the trial, and so yeah, he took his life when I was 17. Um and so, you know, I had known a little bit about suicide before, but not very much at all. And I didn't totally realize the negative effects of the Hare Krishna understanding of suicide and like how that would affect me in my healing while trying to like relate to the community that was kind of my whole world at the time, you know. Like I remember like
So were you already at the Brooklyn Temple, or was it before you went to the
it was
Brooklyn
right
Temple?
before I moved to the Brooklyn Temple. And
Okay.
then yeah, I moved like a few months after. And I remember being in the Brooklyn Temple and feeling so sad and so depressed. Naturally, I was experiencing like extreme grief. And I remember, and because, of how I was raised, I had some desire for, some spiritual comfort from my
Mm.
situation. I remember asking Chandrasekhar Maharaj, or sorry, Chandrasekhar, who was living in the temple, you know, some philosophical understanding of what happens to the soul when, a person commits suicide. And he just looked at me with zero emotion and just said, "Oh, yeah, your dad, he's probably a ghost. Yeah, he's probably a ghost right now." And I was like, okay. It's like you look
Whoa.
to but that was like the comment. That's just like a common response to suicide. And also like a common response to anything that is somewhat uncomfortable and different from like the mask of, oh, everything's okay, Hare Krishna, I'm just doing my service, whatever.
Just
you
doing
know
my service.
yeah, like eye twitching, like arm falling off, families in the poorhouse about to lose your apartment, but you're like, no, I'm still like, giving all my free time and doing free labor at the temple, it's all good. You know what I mean? That's the vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, this is
But it's
such,
changing.
what's that?
It's changing.
Yeah, it is changing.
Culture's changing. It changes every 5 years. So it's already like, it's already decentralized. It's decentralizing. The culture is from
Yeah.
the people and spreading
So,
outward. So I think it's
so
really
when was
beautiful.
it like when you were like, okay, I don't like, so you were in the temple
Yeah.
and you were living in New York City.
Yep.
Well, you were in Brooklyn. For me, I'm a Manhattan girl,
Yeah.
so let's not, let's not, let's not say.
Not the city.
Yeah.
That's
So
different.
you were living in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
and so what happened there? How did you grow? How did you, what was your experience there? Okay, you had this, like, he's a ghost.
Yeah. I
And
was like, all right. And then, yeah. So
but
I
your
realized
sister was at the temple too, right? So you
yeah,
were.
my sister was, my sister had been running the temple with her husband since 1991. So I spent a lot of time there growing up. It was like my home, as much as any other
Mm.
place. Actually, more so than any other place that I've lived. Like, Radha Govinda was, their picture was above my crib. Like my parents got married in front of them. My sister got married in front of Radha Govinda. Like, I spent all of my life, like growing up playing on, in the temple room, in the pujari room. Just that temple was, yeah, my life. It was amazing. So moving in there was, it was like being home, but also I was very much aware that what I
You weren't going to
wanted,
get the support you're going to need. You were
yeah,
like,
I had to go
okay.
out, I had to go out and I
Mm.
started working and luckily, I was like 17, 18. And in New York, there's, a lot of, I mean, like the Hare Krishna community is like, there's like the temple community, but then there's like a lot of like cultural crossover. So it was actually pretty
Sure.
easy for me to kind of find my path. Um,
Venture out a bit in a
yeah,
with
I mean,
with a
I
long
was,
leash.
yeah, I was like, yeah, and it was great. And I was always like, I was always really protected. And somehow like Krishna was like very present in all of my experiences. Like anything that I wanted to do, like I got into skateboarding, music, just like anything that I got into, somehow Krishna was like right there. and you know, was so protecting me somehow. And Krishna, even, you know, at the times when I thought I was really rebelling, you know, in my mind, I was like going out, I was like, you know, drinking at parties, like smoking, whatever I was doing, you know, just like being a normal teenager, experiencing the world and experiencing life. Somehow, you know, and in my mind, I always felt like I was being really bad, you know, and I was like a little guilty. I always felt like I was doing something wrong. But even when I'd be out, it'd be like my friends would be talking to me about Krishna. People would be like, you know, telling me about how they knew the devotees or they were into this band. You know what I mean? So it was like, I was like, all right, like I'm rebelling, but I'm also not because it's
Krishna's not letting you really.
yeah, and so now I realize if I really wanted to rebel, I would have become like a finance, you know, banker or something like that, or like a stockbroker or something like that,
Oh,
you know.
uh, yeah, I don't know if I see you there, Brittany.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Uh,
But yeah, the temple was like was my yeah, it was my home, and it was also, yeah, it was really intense being in two different worlds, you know?
mm.
Like
So
living in the
navigating,
yeah, and navigating too. Like I'd be out and I'd have my life and I'd have my friends. And then, you know, I'd go back to the temple and have to, you know, adjust my identity to fit into those um,
is it
you know,
difficult for
constructs.
you? Did
Yeah,
you feel a little
totally.
bit pulled back and forth?
Oh yeah, it was so difficult because like in the outside world I was like very free and just like wild. You know, I just like did what I want. I wore what I want. I didn't have like, you know, gender constructs on me because being in the temple was like, you know, it's like you're expected to have, which is super problematic in itself. Like if you look at like the Hare Krishna like beauty standard or like the cultural beauty standard, it's like, and then you think about
Any beauty standard is,
well, beauty standard in
you know,
general,
not,
but how it's like
yes,
specifically related to Indian culture, you
yes.
know? And it's like, I
Which
mean, that's a
isn't
whole
our,
like dissertation,
yeah, that's a,
you
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
But but yeah, so yeah, yeah, so yeah, I rebelled against those things. Like I shaved my head, I had short hair, I wore like baggy clothes, you know, anything that was like non-conforming to the particular culture that I grew up in.
I remember once you told me you were like you were in the book and temple and someone was telling you that your ankles were showing.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I remember you
yeah.
telling me that, and you were
Yeah,
like,
oh, yeah, but that's super common. You know, it's like really common like in, you know, in Hare Krishna culture, it's like none of the responsibility for anything ever lays on the men. It's always on the women. So it's like if you're, you know, if basically, you know, a group of people in the 70s and the 80s, they created like a puritanical society and culture based on their guru's teachings. And it was like very heavily influenced
based
from
on their understanding of their
no,
guru's
and it's
teaching.
from like they all grew up in like hyper either Judeo-Christian America,
Yes,
you know, for the
yes,
most part. So
yes.
a lot of, you know, they took that training or that, you know, was had such like an impact on the formation of this their psychology. So then when
Mm,
they started this new culture, it just like influenced, you know. So growing up, like I
absolutely.
experienced like Hare Krishna culture, but a lot of like the rules and regulations and like the yeah, a lot of it I think has like Christian influence.
Yeah,
Um
Christian dogma in there also. But I think also it's like, you know, I remember once, I'm not going to name names or be anywhere, but there was like, I was in a temple and there was this young guy and sat next to me and he said, all women are snakes and demons. And, right. I know you're laughing. It's so funny because, and I just looked at him and I said, what? And he goes, the way they dance, they're just trying to manipulate me. And I was
Yeah.
just like, dude. And I just looked at him and I was like, I
You're
don't
like,
want to
you're a
spend so
freak.
much. No, I told him, I said, the day that you take responsibility for
Yep.
the senses that you can't control is
Yeah.
going to be a victory. I said, because you cannot put this on women
Yeah.
just because they're born in that body,
Yeah.
because you can't keep it in your pants. That's what I told
Yeah.
him.
And what to
And you
speak
need to
of like,
learn. Yeah.
yeah, and to speak of like, women, being able to like express themselves and like feel comfortable in their bodies and like in their sexuality. Like that's like a non-existent in the Hare Krishna
Mm.
community. Or it is, but it comes from like, you know, exposure to the outside world and like integration with friends and, but yeah, so
I think when
yeah,
it's all
none of
coming from a when all those things come from two both sexes being very puristic in a very
Mhm.
godlike way, it's
Yeah.
perfect. But who is like that?
Yeah, but and it's not even
Who's like
perfect
that?
because it's a repression of like a natural human experience or like the human body, it's like total repression. And the way that the culture started, I mean, if you think about like the Hare Krishna culture in a lot of ways is pure and its transmission from the 70s until now. Like, and I'm only talking about like the Hare Krishna culture in America. Like it's pretty pure in the transition. So you know, you can see how from like letters from Srila Prabhupada and different like writings of people that were there, you can really see how the culture was formed and how those like structures remain in place, those like thought structures remain in place until now. And one of them, in the 70s, it was, even very much, even more so, like an extremely misogynistic culture. Like if you read, the Lifetime article in the 80s about New Vrindavan, I mean, it's like very clear women were expected to they weren't good for very much except for cooking, for taking care of children, for teaching, and for like marriage. Like that's pretty much it. Like
But
women never had positions.
wouldn't you say that that was the mis the misconception um, of American boomer men who were perhaps chauvinistic and weren't enlightened enough to treat a woman with the highest of respects as like
Yeah,
when I
they were
read when
coming
I
from, but the thing is, a lot of these people, they weren't like, it's not like they were squares, you know what I mean? The Hare Krishna movement was born out of like the 60s and the 70s, like counterculture American, many different movements, but it was born from that. So what I get confused about is like, and one of my like confusion when I think about baby boomers in general, and even like, even like the generation after that is like you had this like total, rebellion from mainstream culture, and then you dive like straight into this like new culture and you create this like new world. And I think at a certain point it was very counter and it was kind of like revolutionary in ideology, but
maybe the understanding of the people weren't pure enough to
oh,
execute
well,
that in a proper
certainly
way.
not. I mean,
That's the
you
thing.
have it's like I mean, it's like anything. Like I've got friends all the time, who are like really into whatever, and then, if they have extreme personality, they get really like into something else, and then that's their entire world, and they, disregard everything. They're like it's like with music. It's like someone who's really into the Grateful Dead, and then they get really into whatever it is. But
Yeah.
it's the same thing. But it's like when you create, yeah. But when you actually create a culture and you create systems of power, and then you have hierarchies, and they're very clear and very defined and very violent, you know, then it's,
I totally see that. I'm going to even go further in that because I understand, and I understand that that's what happened, and I understand that people have have really suffered under that kind of regime. What I can say as an outsider
Mhm.
is that I look at that and I say, this is caused by the misconception and their emotional messed upness, putting people putting people who aren't elevated enough in a power situation like that is
Mhm.
grossly had been grossly misused in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
and um and it's what happens everywhere. And
Yeah,
let's face it, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody, I really don't. But until people like just take responsibility for the
yeah.
mistakes that were made,
Oh my God,
um,
yeah. You'd
then
think it'd
people
be
are,
so easy,
yeah. And
you
and
know?
I'm not
You're
just
like,
talking about the Hare Krishna movement. I'm talking about generally. I'm
yeah, in
sorry,
general.
I have to say this, men, people in men's bodies, people who are born as
Yeah,
men. It's like it's
yeah.
pretty dire. I'm
It
like,
is.
dude, just
No,
make
it is. It
apologize,
is.
claim responsibility, and
Yeah,
make amends.
yeah.
Just
That's
make
it.
amends.
Like how,
Change, make
yeah,
amends.
yeah. But that's also one of my realizations of like, being in adulthood is I'm realizing that, you know, no one takes responsibility. Just because somebody's 30 or somebody's like 65 or somebody's 75, it doesn't mean crap. It's like you have all like our entire society is based upon people who do not take responsibility. And like,
Wild, huh?
and look at this world. It's like, the climate, war. I mean, it's just like the world is on fire right now, and
Mhm.
it's only getting worse.
Mhm.
And like I look around in every certain scenario, I'm like, where are the adults? Like the people who are in
There are
power,
freaking
that have
adults in
the
every
power
place.
to stop
There's
it.
an adult here.
But you know what I mean? I'm like, where? Like,
Where are the grown-ups?
yeah, I don't know. That's the biggest myth of my entire life. Is that somehow, in this world that is run by adults, that they actually take responsibility for things.
So funny, Bryn. That is hysterical. I love that. And this is, and then like, let's just like bring this back to like responsibility for the self, and I think like
Yeah,
you going to therapy and people going to programs,
yeah,
that's the part where we start healing, because we can only
absolutely.
claim responsibility for ourselves. And like if we want an adult in the room, sometimes it's like, this is what I found out in life, is that if I want an adult in the room, I have to freaking become that adult, and I don't
Yeah,
want to do it either,
yeah, no,
but
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 you know,
there's a lot of beauty in that, taking
there
responsibility,
is, there
claiming
is,
responsibility, and saying, you know what, and I know it sounds so corny, but
yeah,
be the change you want,
yeah,
but it's
no, it's
freaking
true,
true.
it's
and
true.
and with all the stuff that you were talking about in Krishna consciousness, with all of the routines and the stigmas and all that stuff that surrounds it, and the culture and all that stuff,
Mm,
when you just put all of that away and you find your love for Krishna, because I know
yeah,
you have that,
yeah.
then it becomes so easy and so
It does,
simple.
but it's also, but I've realized that it does it, Krishna, and even just from like my understanding and my, because I love philosophy, and I've like devoured philosophy from the time I was like 1 years old, or as soon as I started to read, like I've read, my mom read the Bhagavatam to me every night as I was falling asleep my entire childhood.
Mahabharat.
I just like I have this I love philosophy. I love reading about it. I love reading about the books, and I love like understanding what it is that I'm practicing. Because that's another thing growing up in the movement. It was like I always, like, if I met anybody, I've always had to explain myself. So, like, my identity has been constantly challenged my entire life. I've always been like, it's like I'm in any social situation, and all of a sudden I have to, like, explain where I'm living, how I grew up, where my name's from, just like I have to explain it. And because of that, I've had to really understand it, and I'm not just like, okay, this is like what I was born into, so that's just it. It's like, no, I have to really understand like what the culture is, what my place is in it, how I relate to it, why I relate to it the way that I do, what exactly is the culture and how does it change, and so
And
I've
what do
really,
you want from it and what you don't want from it and what,
yeah,
yeah.
or why, and yeah, how is it, if it's necessary, if it's not necessary, or whatever. But like, Krishna, even the name Krishna, it's not like a love of Krishna is just like a love of God. So to me, it's like, and just from my understanding of the scriptures and, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's teachings and whatever, it's like Krishna is not, God is not just exclusive to the name Krishna, and it's not, God isn't exclusive to the Hare Krishna community, and God isn't exclusive to any particular set of cultures or customs, you know. So it's like my understanding, like I'm definitely super connected and, you know, devoted to God in my own way, but I don't think that has anything to do with the Hare Krishnas or the Hare Krishna community or the culture or, chanting a prescribed amount of rounds or like, anything that is like, I just, yeah, I think
That's
it's,
what you found for yourself. You found for yourself your
yeah,
way
yeah,
to love God.
yeah,
I love that.
in my way. And it's really based on Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's teachings. And actually, the, you know, Srila Prabhupada's dream for the Hare Krishna movement was for the second and third generation to really be integrated into the world. And so the way that I relate to God and the way that I relate to life is actually like, and a lot of Gurukulis have that same, um, feeling and that same expression, but that's, you know, for better for worse, that's pretty much like living out Srila Prabhupada's hopes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, which is cool. But,
I love you. You're the best.
I love you too. I love you too. But yeah, there's also, oh yeah, and taking responsibility for yourself and, that taking responsibility for myself and how I think and my actions and all that stuff. Like that's very much a part of just like a natural developmental process of a person. You
Well,
reach a
you know what? No, it's not natural.
well,
I
but
think
that's like
I
how,
think so. I think
yeah,
it's natural, but I think a lot of
yeah,
people try to avoid that natural
totally.
process.
But then there's a cultural piece to that, which I think is really interesting. And it's something that I'm realizing is, you know, and I only know this through, spending time in therapy, but within the Hare Krishna community, there is especially for women, and for children growing up in the community, there was like a tremendous amount of responsibility placed on the children. So it's like everything
I've heard
was
this. I've
your
heard
fault.
this.
Everything, yeah. I mean, it's in it. Like I've watched so many interviews with Gurukulis from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. It's like, and I really relate to this. And watching those interviews has helped me see that it's actually like a cultural issue. But yeah, there's like a tremendous amount of responsibility placed on children and
Which way?
and
Which way do you
women.
mean?
Like children were expected to be like on the exact same level as adults.
Yes.
from the time they were born until like they're adults. And the adults never took responsibility as adults. So it's like the kids were just like isolated. And, you know, depending on the family, like if kids, you know, had really involved parents that were healthy, that was one thing. But a lot of kids didn't, because also the culture really encourages um, detachment from family. So that, you know, ideologically is one thing, but if that goes into practice, that's another thing. So as a child in the movement, I think experiences of like isolation and like over responsibility are really prevalent. So one of the things that I'm working on as an adult with some separation from that is realizing that not everything is my fault. And I don't
Okay.
actually like I could take responsibility for myself and you know how I respond to things, but you know to a certain degree. Um, but I'm not responsible for the actions of
Right.
others. I'm not responsible for like a
Absolutely.
culture, you know.
Absolutely.
But
Wonderfully put.
so
You're not responsible for what happened, but we are responsible to make.
yeah, but it's a little different, yeah, with that cultural cultural piece
Mhm.
to it.
It's
That
very
ex
tricky, isn't it? Very, very, very tricky. You know, it's funny because when I hear, you know, you said you had this magical childhood and all of this stuff you had said before, and it was just like this bubble, and but then there's that. So
yeah, and that's
that's very complex. It's
yeah,
really
it's super
complex.
yeah. And then I mean another aspect to my to the and when I say magical childhood, it wasn't my childhood wasn't like disassociated. I have synesthesia, so it's like the way that my brain works is like magical. So it's like the way, you know, but it's not disassociated. Whereas like, you know, a lot of people with dissociative identity disorder or different types of,
Mhm.
you know, or they've gone through really intense like abusive experiences. And I have seen it a lot like within the Hare Krishna community. It's like, you know, a certain type of magical thinking. And that wasn't, I guess that actually, it wasn't so prevalent. I just have this, like my brain is kind of magical. And so my experiences were like very visceral
Magical.
and real. Yeah. But
Yeah.
but I just wanted to be clear. Um, it wasn't disassociated.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think I have a very similar, you know, not, of course, not in the movement, but I think I guess I learned at a very young age that I'm pretty much on my own. It's like at home, it was like there was food and shelter and like
Mhm.
not much more.
Yeah.
And so I'd like figure it out. And
Yeah.
I think really till the age of like 7 or 8, I was like in my own, like 7, I was in my own little bubble. And I was happy with my friends and just running around like a dirty kid in the streets of New York
Yeah.
with my friends and doing this and like, you know, discovering things. And, you know, the funny thing is that, you know, it was a common occurrence. I grew up on the Upper West Side in a very mixed neighborhood. I mean, like, and then I had Riverside Park on 96th Street, right, practically right outside my door. And so I was allowed like from the age of like 3 to go there by myself.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and like, so we would play in this one little area, and there were always like pervies in there, like masturbating
Yeah. I
when we were
bet.
really little. And we just like, and talk about being in a bubble, like it never, like I cannot say to this day that it affected me in any way, except for we
Wow.
thought it was hysterical. We
Yeah.
would actually look for them and laugh at them and point at them and get all of our friends and laugh and 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 like, and then I'm thinking like, Jesus, you know, like now, like if someone did that to my kid, I'd probably like just break their neck or something.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
it never really like, and then when my parents found out, or like when other parents found out, they were just like freaking out, and like I had absolutely no idea why they were freaking out. I was like, what's the big deal? I don't, you know, it's like it didn't
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sense.
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why that just came up, but I was just thinking about that, just, being in
No,
that
but
bubble,
yeah, but it's interesting. And it's interesting as a kid, yeah, you have the ability to, navigate really intense and traumatic things.
I mean, how is that intense and traumatic? It's just like seeing a part of someone's body, and like I didn't
Yeah,
know what
that's true.
sex was.
It's
I had
true.
no idea, and it was just
Yeah.
kind of like if someone was in the bushes going like this with their arm,
Yeah, yeah,
I would
yeah. It's
give it the
true.
name
You
like, "Oh,
didn't,
you're silly,"
right,
like what's
right.
that, like.
Yeah, right.
But I guess like they say, ignorance is bliss. But I think
Yeah.
maybe other kids, if they did know, maybe it damaged them. Maybe it did damage them.
Good.
Maybe the other kids that were there felt like that was something
Yeah, maybe,
not okay. I
maybe.
just had no idea. But so like when you're saying you're like in a
Brain
bubble,
protect.
and
Yeah. Yeah, the brain protects you.
yeah, absolutely. Or it just protects you for lack of knowledge as well, because you don't know anything
Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally.
How complex. How
It's
long have
so
we been going? We've been going so long now.
people.
Wow.
I know. I know. I just looked. It's like 10:30. It's been
We could
2 hours.
we could go on forever, but I think
I
maybe
know, and I feel
and
like
and I feel like that the second half of
yes.
this was like intensely better, because it always like
Okay.
it's like, well, with every interview, it's like the first
Mhm.
20 minutes is always like warming up, getting into the
Yeah, yeah,
conversation, and then
yeah,
it starts to get really good,
yeah.
you know.
And then you
And I
start
don't know
to
how
hear how I
I
really
don't know how to
think.
edit anything. I have no idea how to edit, so I just put everything on, so all of it's
Oh
going
my
on here.
God. Yeah, I mean, okay, the thing is, it's like I'm just starting to write about my experiences, and so I'm starting to, become a little bit clear with my thoughts,
I hear
Um,
that too with you. I really do. It's really,
okay,
really nice. I see you've grown so much in the last 4 years.
thank you.
Yeah,
I feel it. And I'm just, yeah, I'm like really interested in understanding from a cultural level.
there's an adult in the room, and it's Rinny.
She's here. I'm an adult. But I don't
That's gonna be the name of this podcast. That's gonna be the name of
Rin's
it.
an
Not the
adult.
podcast. It's gonna be there's an adult in the room, Vrin. Uh,
And she has a freakishly excellent memory and remembers everything.
you're the
So
best.
and I only I only say that because um yeah, like as I'm, reflecting on these things and these cultural movements, I have like very specific clear memories with certain people, to use as reference.
Why
So
are you giggling? What do you mean?
because it's like slightly I'm just like because I feel like when especially when I was younger and I was like speaking with like different adults or having experiences within the community, people don't really, first of all, people don't people don't care about kids that much and they don't think that they're gonna like remember, you know what I mean?
What they do?
But I actually do very, very clearly, which is awesome. I have almost like a photographic memory. So when I like,
Wow.
yeah, it's cool. I like got it confirmed with my neurologist. But yeah, so when I'm doing this writing and I'm doing this this work to like understand with the hopes of like healing. That's like the root of why, I feel the need to really come to this type of understanding.
Mm.
Um, these memories and um, they're like my strong reference points, which is awesome.
Right.
This work, yeah.
So, so is there anything when we're wrapping this up now? Is there anything you want to say, or you want to plug your band, or your or your or your artwork, or your yoga classes? She's also a yoga teacher. There's so much, the many facets.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess I didn't really promote myself that strongly
well, we're
during
gonna do it now.
during
So
this
promote.
podcast.
So it's not like millions
Um,
of people are listening, but there are some good people. There are some good people listening.
I need to get a better PR person.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
When I'm on Joe Rogan one day, I'll plug you.
no, I don't think if you're on Joe Rogan, don't plug me. I don't want to be plugged on that show.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know like
Yeah,
what's correct anymore. I'm like in my own bubble. I don't even
definitely
know.
not Joe Rogan, but
Okay.
I-
No
yeah,
idea.
shout out to Sugar Milk.
Sugar Milk. That's her name. That's the
Sugar
name of
Milk
her band.
and
Sugar Milk. I love that name.
um I do a yoga class once a week at Park Street Studios in Brooklyn, and
Yoga
it's
Nidra, right? Yoga
yoga
Nidra, right?
nidra, yeah,
Oh, I love it.
and asana, and it's just for friends. It's donation. It's just really wonderful and relaxing, and yeah, I'm working on a new series and working on music and just doing my stuff.
Yay. What
Yeah.
series? What do you mean? A new series of art?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Years of art, and writing.
Well,
And
most of Rin's art is Krishna related, or
yeah,
like there's a lot of beautiful pictures. Got Radha Krishna on my
amazing.
arm.
But the images have to go with the writing, because with the writing, the images that I create are they're just like magical and slightly whimsical. But then the writing touches on like the actual, oh, you gotta go.
Sorry.
You know.
Yeah. No, no worries. Yeah, my friend Kalini's here.
You gotta
Lindy. Okay.
go.
Go
Okay, I
ahead.
love.
Go ahead. So no, no. Please finish your sentence.
I don't know. I was just saying like what I'm doing now, the focus is on my experience in Gitanagari, and the writing and the images create a really nice contrast and an accurate
Can't wait to
description
see.
of my
Where can
experience.
people see that? Where can we get that?
Well, not yet. I haven't released anything yet. I'm
Okay.
still working on stuff.
All
But
right.
I'll
Well,
let you.
check your Instagram, right? You can like
Yeah.
hit that on Insta.
Yeah.
Vrnda.Lila.
Yeah. But I'm
All
private,
right.
so okay.
You're private, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
love you, Vryn. Thank you so much. Like your experience, your strength, and your hope is something that I love, and you, I love. I love you so very much, and I'm so happy to have you in my life.
I love
And
you, and I'm happy to be in your life. And I'm so happy we connected. And I just love you. And let me know, let me know after after we finish recording. Let
Mhm.
me know what the final
Let me know what?
what up to. Did we stop?
Okay. No, no, not yet. All right.
No,
Say
wait.
goodbye, and we'll
Okay,
stop.
bye.
This concludes another episode. Thanks for listening. In order for me to serve this community to the best of my ability, I welcome feedback. Please write your feedback at bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. Also, please don't forget to follow and give us a 5-star rating. Share this with family and friends. If you'd like to join our Bhakti Recovery community or just find out what we're all about, please visit our website at www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. That's www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. There are no dues or fees, and we meet daily. If you or someone you know is struggling with addictions, and or associated behaviors, you will find links in our show notes to various 12-step programs. Nobody seeking recovery need ever be alone again.
सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.